Hello everyone, this is the first lesson recording for February 22nd, 2021. We started off by doing some warm-up exercises on solving quadratic equation using zero product property. So to begin, can you pause the video and solve these two questions, please? Please do this in your notebook, and then when you have your answers, you're going to tell me in private chat. Remember that solving quadratic equation, you need to set the equation to be 0 first, and then try to factor the quadratic expression on the one side, and then set each of the factor to be equal to 0. So please pause the video and do them now. We'll go over the answers in a little while. Some announcements. This is the result for period 1 of the unit test that was before the break. The mean score was 71% for this class and 76% for period 2. And about test corrections, it's available to all that you can earn back up to 20% of missed points. You can do it anytime before the final. However, I am going to say that the sooner you do this, the more beneficial it will be for you, because 1, it's going to be fresher in your mind. 2, because math is cumulative, meaning that what you learn now is going to carry forward for later on. So if you learn whatever you did not learn before, then it's going to be helpful for you as we go forward from this point on too. Okay, you do need to explain what the correct strategy and show using it. And if you don't understand it, come work with me or a tutor if you have a tutor or master tutor. Any improvement opportunity, it is an improvement opportunity to help you learn the material so you can do better on future assessment. So, and here is the correction template, which should look like this. Okay, and it gives you all the instructions as well as example of good correction, test correction, and example of test correction that will not receive any points. Okay, and this is the template. What are we doing today? We are going to be solving quadratic equations, and we're going to first review the solving using zero product property, and then we're also going to learn a new method by square rooting. Alright, so this was the warm-up problem. I hope you all had a chance to do this. Here's what you should have done. Okay, since we have quadratic expression in factored form which is equal to 0, we know that the only way we can have the two factors that multiply to 0 is if each of the factor is going to be equal to 0. That's using the zero product property. That means I can separate this into two different branches. X minus 4, this first factor has to be equal to 0, or the second factor, 2x plus 1, is equal to 0. Okay, so from here I can add 4 to both sides, or bring this negative 4 to the other side by taking a negative of it, so that becomes x is equal to 4. And then for this, okay, I can bring this positive 1 to the other side by subtracting 1, so that becomes 2x is equal to negative 1. Divide both sides by 2, so therefore x is equal to negative half. So the solutions are two solutions, 4, negative 1/2. Notice that I am using this notation with curly parentheses. This is very different from if I wrote 4, negative half. Okay, mathematically, if I wrote this with curly parentheses, I am saying that the solution to this equation is 4 or negative half. When I write using this regular parentheses, then what you're saying is x is equal to 4 and y value is equal to negative half. This is not what you want to communicate. So please make sure that if you're communicating in this way, you are saying using the curly parentheses with 4, negative half. Okay, let's try this problem. Okay, first we need to set the equation to be equal to 0. So x squared plus 4x And we're going to bring 32 to the other side of the equal sign by taking a negative of 32. Negative of 32 is minus 32. So in essence, you're actually subtracting 32 from both sides. Okay, so you're subtracting 32 from both sides. When you do that, you're taking 32 minus 32 minus 32 becomes 0. And then negative 32 appears on the other side. So that's what you are doing. And then from here, I am going to factor. How can I factor? Notice that this is x squared. The leading coefficient is 1. So that means the only way I can do this is if I have x and x in each of the binomial. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 32. So one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. Okay, and they add to 4. Okay, so since one's going to be positive and the other is going to be negative, we're looking for the difference to be 4. So that's going to be 4 and 8. And we want the sum to be positive 4, so the positive sign will go with 8 and the negative sign will go with negative 4. And if I use FOIL to quickly check my answer, I know this is correct. So that is equal to 0. Now I can say that, okay, so I know that either x minus 4 is equal to 0 or x plus 8 is equal to 0. So from here I can bring negative 4 to the other side by taking a negative of negative 4. That becomes x is equal to 4. Bring x to the other side by taking a negative of negative 8 or positive 8. That's going to be negative 8. Okay, so I can use my curly parenthesis notation for comma negative 8. Okay, so let's take some notes. Let's summarize the steps. So when you're solving quadratic equations using zero product, if you're trying to solve equation that looks like x squared minus 5x is equal to negative 4, first step is to rewrite the equation in its standard form to be equal to 0. Okay, so its standard form on the left hand side is equal to 0. And then you factor the equation. And then apply the zero product property, set each factor to be equal to 0. And then solve both equations and then verify your solution work, which is optional, but always a good idea. So how do I do that? Rewrite the equation as ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. What do I want? I want this negative 4 to come to the other side. Or I add 4 to both sides. That becomes 0 on the right hand side and the left hand side is in standard form. Now we can factor x squared minus 5x plus 4. I know that that is going to factor to x minus 4. X minus 1 is equal to 0. Then from here, I apply the zero product property and set each of the factor to be equal to 0. So x minus 4 is equal to 0 or x minus 1 is equal to 0. And then from there, solve each of the equation. Bring negative 4 to the other side by taking a negative of it, so it becomes plus 4. And then take a negative of negative 1, and that becomes positive 1. And I can always verify my work by substituting this into the original equation. That's x squared minus 5x is equal to negative 4. Not the equation that you've manipulated, but the original equation. Set it to, and then you substitute the value you got and see if you get the true statement. Okay, and 4 squared is 16. Negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. So that's 16 minus 20 is negative 4, and that is true. And likewise, you do that to the other side as well. Alright, so I want you to pause the video this time, okay? And I want you to try to solve this yourself. Okay, again, you do your work on paper, then put your answer in private chat when you have it done. So the first thing I need to do is to set this equation to be equal to 0. Okay, so I have two options. I can either bring 4x squared to the right hand side or bring 15x plus 4 to the left hand side. I find it's always easier if the leading coefficient is positive. So I am going to choose to bring these two things to the left hand side. Okay, how do I do that? You subtract 15x from both sides, so that becomes 4x squared minus 15x. And what is positive 4? What is the opposite of positive 4? It's negative 4 is equal to 0. Okay, so we basically subtracted 15x and 4 from the right hand side, from both sides, and then you came up with that. Okay, from here now I need to factor this. Okay, so you have to, since the leading coefficient is 4, I have to use my diamond and use the grouping method to factor, or you can do guess and check. Okay, I've introduced that to you last lesson. See if you can figure it out. Okay, the more you do it, the better you're going to get it. Okay, so 4x squared, the only way I can get this is either 2x times 2x or 4x times 1. Okay, so I'm going to try 2x and 2x. And I'm looking for factor of negative 4. Okay, so that means negative 4, it could be 1 and 4. One's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. And then, or 2 and 2. Okay, 2 and 2. If I do 2 and 2, that's going to lead to, that's going to cancel out, right? It's going to cancel out. So one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. It's going to become 4x squared minus 4. So we're not going to have the middle term. So that's not going to work. What if it was 1 and 4? Okay, so what if it was 1 and 4? That's going to 2 times 4 is 8x plus minus 2x, or plus or minus, it's going to be, so the difference is going to be 6x. So that does not work. Okay, so now I have to try the other combination, which is 1x times 4x. And again, I have the option of 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. So if I put 2 here and 2 here, one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative. So I'm looking for this difference to be 15x. That's going to be 8x minus 2x. Okay, so that's going to be 6x. So that does not work. But I do know that what if it was 1 and 4? Okay, if it was 1 and 4 here, 1 will be 4x and 4 will be 4x. That will cancel out. So we don't want that. What if it was 4 and 4? 4 and 1 here. So 4 times 4x is going to be 16x minus 1x. So that does give me 15x. So now I need to be figuring out the positive and negative. So I want the bigger number to be negative. So 4 times 4x is going to be the bigger number. So we want that to be negative x and this to be positive. Let's check this by using FOIL. X times 4x is 4x squared. Okay. And negative 4 times positive 1 is negative 4. So the inside, multiplying the 2 inside, is going to be negative 4 times 4x is negative 16x plus 1x is negative 15x. So that checks out. Now that I've done so, I know that I can break this into 2 branches, and I know that x minus 4 is equal to 0, or 4x plus 1 is equal to 0. So that leaves me with x is equal to 4. In this case, bring positive 1 to the other side. 4x is equal to negative 1, and divide both sides by 4. So x is equal to negative a quarter. So my solutions are 4, negative a quarter. Okay, what about this? Okay, so the first thing you need to do is, you can't set this to be equal to 16. So first thing you need to do is multiply this out. Okay, I am going to continue this in the next recording, otherwise I'm going to run out of time.